There are more than 10 million prisoners in the world and 600,000 escape attempts each year. Not all of them have been successful, but spectacular escapes happen again and again. In this video, we list the top 10 prison escapes of all time. Enjoy! Number 10. YOSHIE Shiratori. YOSHIE Shiratori is known best for escaping from prison 4 times in 3 years. After being convicted of murder, he was sentenced to life plus 23 years imprisonment. Shiratori escaped from Aomori prison in 1936, was recaptured and escaped from Akita prison in 1942. In 1944, he rusted his handcuff and an inspection hole with miso soup before escaping from a Bashiri prison. He was caught again in 1946. Sapporo District Court sentenced him to death, which caused Shiratori to desperately find a way to escape. And in 1947, he dug a tunnel and escaped for the 4th time. In 1948, he was recaptured after admitting to a policeman that he was an escaped convict. His death sentence was revoked, and Shiratori eventually served 26 years before being paroled in 1961. Number 9. John Dillinger. John Dillinger was an American bank robber during the Depression era who robbed 24 banks and 4 police stations during his crime spree. He escaped from prison twice in his criminal career. After robbing 2 banks, he was captured and imprisoned in Lima in the autumn of 1933. Dillinger used his time in jail to aid the escape. Inmates smuggled guns into their prison cells, which they used to escape just 4 days after Dillinger had been captured. The group then returned to prison, impersonating Indiana State Prison officers and successfully releasing Dillinger from his cell. After another series of bank robberies, Dillinger was captured again in 1934 and sent to Crown Point Jail. The police boasted to the media that the jail was escape-proof. This proved wildly untrue when Dillinger crafted a fake pistol from a piece of wood, supposedly using shelving in his cell and a razor to carve it. Dillinger tricked a guard to open his cell, and then took 17 men hostage before luring the guards back to the cell block and locking them in his own prison cell. He then fled. Number 8. Alfred George HIINDS. Alfred George HIINDS was a British criminal who successfully broke out of 3 high-security prisons while serving a 12-year prison sentence. HIINDS' first escape was from a Nottingham prison in 1958, where he managed to get through locked doors and over a 20-foot prison wall to his freedom. He traveled throughout Europe during his time on the run, working as a painter and decorator, before being apprehended after 248 days of freedom. HIINDS used his rearrest to his advantage, bringing a lawsuit against the authorities, and hence finding a reason to be escorted to the law courts. Accomplices supplied HIINDS with a padlock and attached screw eyes onto a toilet cubicle, so that while being escorted to the toilet, HIINDS bundled the 2 guards into the cubicle and locked them in. Escaping onto Fleet Street, HIINDS made for the airport, where he was captured 5 hours later. HIINDS' third and final prison, where he was captured 5 hours later on escape, came less than a year later, when he escaped from Chelmsford Prison. He fled to Ireland, where he lived for 2 years under an assumed name, before being stopped driving an unregistered car and rearrested. Number 7. John Gerard. John Gerard is the only person ever known to have escaped from the notorious Tower of London. A Jesuit priest, Gerard was imprisoned for continuing to preach his Catholic beliefs when the church was under heavy persecution from Elizabethan England. During his imprisonment, he endured several interrogations, often being tortured for information. He never broke, but was eventually sentenced to death for his crimes. Desperate to escape, Gerard communicated with allies on the outside via smuggled notes written in invisible ink made from orange juice. These allies rowed a boat into the tower's moat, and Gerard was able to escape by using a rope thrown up to him. Cheating death after almost falling because of his tortured hands, Gerard managed to climb down to the boat, flee England, and live the rest of his life in Rome. Number 6. The Texas Seven. A group of prisoners dubbed the Texas Seven escaped from the John B. Connolly unit on December 13th of 2000. An elaborate scheme devised by the group led to the group overpowering and restraining 16 people, including supervisors, officers, and 3 uninvolved inmates. Once overpowered, clothing, credit cards, and IDs were taken from the victims and used to impersonate civilians at the back gate of the prison. 4 of the offenders stayed behind to make phone calls to the prison tower guards to distract them. The rest raided the guard tower and stole numerous weapons, and then stole a prison maintenance pickup truck in which all 7 drove away from the prison. Number 5. Empress Matilda's Escape. In the autumn of 1142, Empress Matilda was besieged in Oxford Castle by soldiers loyal to her cousin Stephen. A battle labeled the Anarchy was raging across the country for the crown of England. Matilda's epic escape came one freezing snowy night in December, when, according to legend, she wrapped herself in a white cape and fled on makeshift ice skates across the ice to Wallingford Castle. Number 4. Escape from Alcatraz. In June 1962, 3 prisoners of the notorious Alcatraz Island escaped and mysteriously went missing. A plot devised by fellow prisoner Alan West saw Frank Morris, John Angeline, and his brother Clarence spending 2 years digging an escape route through the cell walls and building a raft to sail to freedom. Dummies were placed in the 3 prisoners' beds to fool the prison guards, so it was not until the following morning that the guards discovered they had gone. Parts of the raft and life preservers were later found in the bay along with some of the prisoners' personal effects, leading investigators to conclude that the men had drowned. The FBI officially closed the case on December 31st, 1979. Number 3. Ronnie Biggs. Ronnie Biggs is infamous for his role in the Great Train Robbery of 1936, and for his 36 years living as a fugitive until his voluntary surrender in 2001. Initially captured and sent to prison for his part in the Great Train Robbery, Biggs only served 19 months of his prison sentence before escaping from Wandsworth Prison on July 8, 1965, by scaling a wall with a rope ladder and dropping onto a waiting van. He fled to Brussels via boat, and then on to Paris, where he acquired a new identity and underwent plastic surgery. Number 2. Maze Prison. Maze Prison was the location of the biggest prison escape in British history, when on September 25, 1983, 38 IRA prisoners smashed their way out of the maximum security prison, widely considered to be one of the most escape-proof prisons in Europe. 15-foot fences and 18-foot thick concrete walls topped with barbed wire encircled H-block, and solid steel doors barred all exits from the prison complex. The prisoners planned the escape over several months. 2 accomplices, Bobby Story and Jerry Kelly, started work as orderlies to identify weaknesses in the system, and 6 handguns were smuggled into the prison by exploiting these downfalls. Just after 2:30 p.m., prisoners seized control by simultaneously taking the prison officers hostage and hijacking a lorry, which was delivering food to the block. Officers in the gatehouse were also taken hostage, and after several attempts, the main gate was opened. Abandoning the lorry after a makeshift roadblock was set up by 2 cars just outside the prison, the prisoners escaped over a fence. Number 1. The Great Escape. Devised by squadron leader Roger Bushell in the spring of 1943, the Great Escape from prisoner of war camp Stalag Luft III occurred in the night of March 24, 1944. Bushell was in command of the escape committee in the North Compound, where the British airmen were housed. His Great Escape plan involved the building of 3 bloody deep, bloody long tunnels underneath the camp fences. The tunnels were nicknamed Tom, Dick, and Harry. If one of the tunnels was discovered by the Germans, it was presumed that they would never suspect 2 more might be underway. More than 600 prisoners were involved in the tunnel's construction. The prisoners were very inventive with their scavenged items. The 200 potential escapees were divided into two groups. The first group of 100, called serial offenders, were guaranteed a place, and included prisoners who spoke German well or had a history of escapes. 70 of the men were chosen because they were considered to have contributed most to the tunnels. The second group was chosen by drawing lots. On Friday, March 24th, the escape attempt began. At 10:30 p.m., the first man out emerged and discovered the tunnel had come up short. Rather than reaching into a nearby forest, the tunnel came out just short of the tree line and perilously close to a guard tower. Even so, 76 men crawled through the tunnel to freedom before the 77th was spotted by the guards at 4:55 a.m. on March 25th.